He offered his own parents £750,000 as a thank you gift after winning the lottery. A genuinely life-changing sum for most people on Earth. And they called him selfish for not handing over half of everything instead. 5 stories today about people who decided someone else's money, seat, or effort belonged to them by default. A 19-year-old guy won just over £4 million on the lotto earlier this year. He waited about a week before telling his parents, both in their late 40s, and the moment landed exactly the way you'd hope. Genuine excitement, celebration, joy all around. That lasted right up until his parents started talking about the money like it already belonged to them. Retiring early, buying a boat, a new car, traveling the world. He asked, reasonably, how much they were expecting. Their answer, delivered completely straight-faced, half. He'd already planned to give them £750,000 as a thank you. Plenty enough in his view, especially since they had their own savings and a fully paid-off mortgage already. When he offered that instead of half, they got angry and started calling him selfish. Here's the part that's hard to argue with. £750,000 is a borderline life-changing amount of money for the vast majority of people on the planet. Being labeled the villain of the story for not adding another $1.25 million on top of that, to 2 people who are already financially stable, is a genuinely strange standard to hold someone to, lottery winnings or not. Money brought out one set of parents' worst instincts. This next story is about a graduation, 4 guest tickets, and a father who somehow turned his daughter's big day into a negotiation about his girlfriend. A 22-year-old woman was 2 weeks from graduating college, 7 hours from home, with exactly 4 guest tickets to hand out. She gave them to her mom, her dad, her younger brother, and her grandmother, who'd helped raise her during a rough stretch of her mom's life. Her parents divorced when she was 12, and they're civil now, but not close. Her dad has always been the easy parent, around when it's convenient. Her mom is the one who worked extra shifts, drove her everywhere, filled out every form, and stayed up crying with her the year she nearly dropped out. For this trip, her mom had booked an Airbnb months in advance for herself, the brother, the grandmother, and their daughter, plus a rental car and gas, since neither the brother nor grandmother could otherwise afford to make the trip. Her dad initially planned to drive himself and get a cheap motel. Until a month out, he said money was tight and he might not come at all. Her mom, without being asked, quietly offered to cover one hotel night herself so he could still be there, telling her daughter plainly that she deserved to have both parents present, even though it clearly cost her more than just money to make that offer. Then, last week, her dad called sounding thrilled. His girlfriend of 8 months, Kara, had gotten the weekend off and was coming too. The daughter has met Kara twice. She's not unkind, just not close to the family. At a recent birthday dinner, Kara had already started referring to herself as the bonus mom, and the younger brother visibly wanted to disappear. When the daughter told her dad there wasn't a ticket for Kara, he suggested she could still come to dinner, take photos, and hang out at the Airbnb. An Airbnb her mother had paid for, specifically for the people invited. When he added that Kara wouldn't mind sleeping on the couch, something in the daughter finally snapped. She told him the couch was never the point. The point was that her mom had paid so he could watch his daughter graduate, not so he could turn the trip into a couple's weekend. He got defensive, accusing her mom of always getting to be the main parent, and admitted he mostly just wanted someone there so he wouldn't feel awkward. She told him plainly that this weekend wasn't about his comfort. It was about her graduation, and for once, she wanted a weekend where her mom wasn't quietly absorbing everyone else's feelings. He threatened to just stay home if Kara wasn't welcome. She told him that was his choice. But she wasn't giving up her brother's or grandmother's spot, and she wasn't asking her mom to host his girlfriend on her own dime. Now an aunt is accusing her of humiliating her father and making Kara feel unwanted. Her dad's only text since has been, "I hope making your point was worth it." Her mom says she's supportive, but the daughter can tell she feels guilty regardless. Guilty for something that was never her fault in the first place. That was one father putting his girlfriend ahead of his daughter's graduation. This next one involves an entire family conspiring around 2 elderly grandparents and a private plane. A couple in their late 60s has been fully non-contact with the wife's 3 sisters for years, after those sisters took roughly $25,000 from them and never paid it back, trashed a condo they'd been kindly allowed to stay in, and said cruel things to their children over the years. Despite all of that, their 33-year-old daughter, getting married that summer in New York City, desperately wanted her grandparents there. She's named after her grandmother and is close with her grandfather. Both grandparents are in their mid-90s, in failing health, living in Florida, and simply couldn't manage a commercial flight or a long drive. So the father, who runs a successful business, and his brother-in-law, who does well in construction, arranged a private flight through a contact in aviation to bring the grandparents up for 2 weeks around the wedding date of July 18th. That's when the estranged sisters found out and discovered that a nephew was also getting married that same summer. In response, they deliberately scheduled the nephew's wedding for July 11th, the Saturday immediately before their niece's wedding, specifically to take advantage of the grandparents already being in town. Frustrating, but not something the father could control, so he let it go. Then, the actual wedding venue called. Infrastructure repairs meant a forced closure in June, throwing off scheduling. Since the daughter and her fiancé are both attorneys, they negotiated a deal that saved nearly $12,000 by shifting the date to an open slot in August instead. Save the dates had gone out, but not formal invitations yet, so the move was simple. The father rearranged the private flight accordingly. That's when the sisters lost it completely, calling and texting nonstop, screaming that the family was ruining the nephew's wedding and punishing him for something he had nothing to do with, demanding that the father pay for 2 separate private flights so the grandparents could attend both events as originally scheduled. He and his wife laughed, told them exactly where to go, and blocked them again on every platform. The sisters then sent cousins, aunts, and uncles to relay the same message, accusing the couple of prioritizing money over reconciliation. Those calls got the same response. The obvious question nobody on the other side seems to be asking: if the sisters wanted a second private flight so badly, why not simply pay for it themselves? From private jets to something much smaller. This next story is about 4 volunteer hours and a mother who got a lot more defensive than the situation called for. At a neighborhood cleanup event, a volunteer was in charge of signing off on hours for teenagers earning school credit. Show up, sign in, work, get your hours signed based on actual time spent. One teenager arrived with his mother around 9:15, 15 minutes after cleanup started at 9. He signed in, grabbed gloves and a trash bag, posed for a couple of photos near the supply table, and headed off toward the trail. About 20 minutes later, the volunteer noticed he wasn't with any of the work groups. Not being anyone's babysitter, she assumed he joined a different team and didn't go looking. But as every group turned in their filled bags throughout the morning, he never appeared among them. He resurfaced around 12:30, right as everyone was wrapping up, holding an iced coffee. His mother approached with a school form, asking for 4 hours to be signed off. The volunteer explained she could only sign for what she'd actually witnessed, at most 45 minutes to an hour. The mother tensed up immediately, insisting he'd been helping further down the trail the whole time. The volunteer offered a reasonable compromise. If any team lead could confirm his presence, she'd adjust the hours. Without that confirmation, she couldn't in good conscience sign for 4 hours of work that hadn't happened. The mother lowered her voice, said he needed those hours for a school requirement or he'd be in trouble. As if that changed what had actually occurred. The volunteer held her ground, signed for 1 hour, and watched the mother and son leave visibly angry, with the mother accusing her of humiliating him in public, despite almost nobody being around to witness anything. What stands out most is the mother's instinct to defend him immediately, rather than ask him directly what had actually happened during those missing hours. That reaction alone suggests she already knew exactly where he'd been, likely off getting coffee for a few hours before returning right on schedule. Last one for today. Smaller stakes, but maybe the pettiest entitlement of the bunch. This one's about breakfast. A wife has spent years waking her firefighter husband up most mornings with a home-cooked breakfast. Not out of obligation, but because it's genuinely the only reliable way to get him out of bed, given his irregular schedule. Rather than treating it as the small kindness it is, he'd taken to critiquing every plate, morning after morning. The eggs too dry, never quite right, never good enough. After one too many mornings of complaints, she finally told him plainly that he could start making his own breakfast from now on, and that he was acting like a spoiled brat. He responded that he was entitled to an opinion if he was being served dog. He didn't touch the eggs, took one bite of a homemade apple turnover before throwing the rest away, and microwaved a frozen breakfast sandwich instead, despite the fact that the meal in question had been sausage, eggs, and homemade Banana Foster buttermilk pancakes made with butter she'd churned herself from scratch. It's hard to imagine what perfect would even look like to a man unwilling to eat handmade pancakes with homemade butter without complaint. The far more obvious read here isn't that the breakfast itself was ever the actual problem. 5 stories, one running theme. People who decided someone else's money, effort, or generosity was simply owed to them. Which one frustrated you the most? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe for a new story every day. See you tomorrow.